Sisi ni waandaaji wakuu kwa kongamano hili la mauzo ambalo linamshirikisha gwiji wa mauzo duniani Tracy, Azim Jamal, Akash Karia pamoja na Dr. Sebastian Ndege.
I hope this is a day that changes your life, because it's been a day that has changed many lives over the course of the year.
Brian really defines the rules and the principles with real-life examples from his experiences. So his examples are spot on, from Apple to Microsoft to friends that he has like Warren Buffett. You know, these examples have been really specific and spot on. So when you're listening as a student or somebody who wants to learn more, the principles are really adaptive, as I said. Instead of saying, in the real world, Brian goes straight for the real world. He says, he breaks it down and really gives the specific examples of how those principles can be implemented even as of starting tomorrow.
He's actually a very knowledgeable person, and what I found is that he talks more about taking action, writing things down, and how your subconscious mind actually processes it when you write it down. So I think that's a tool that I'm going to use in the future.
But what I've learned in these 2 days is more than what I did in 2 years in my MBA course.
I love the speakers. I love Brian Tracy International, and I've been so overjoyed with this program. Thank you so much.
I hope this is a day that changes your life, because it's been a day that has changed many lives over the course of the year. Good morning. Thank you for being here. Now, you understand there's maximum 5 people per table. Maximum 5 people per table. If there's 6 people at your table, you're going to have to move and sit somewhere else. The reason we have added all the tables is so that there's more room. So I know that you're comfortable on where you were yesterday and with the people you were yesterday. So this is a big test to see if you have the ability to move out of your comfort zone and move at it and sit at another table. There's 5 people maximum per table, okay? 5 maximum per table. You see your hand? Count the number of fingers on your hand. If there's more people than this, you have to move to another table. Does anybody have any questions from yesterday? We're going to start in just a minute, because everybody agreed to be here at 8:30 and they forgot. So we're going to start in just a minute, but does anybody have any questions from yesterday that you thought of last night? Is then everything perfectly clear? Okay, well then we can begin. And we always begin, there's a rule in meetings, by the way. Assume that the latecomer is not coming and begin. Never wait for people who come late to meetings. If the meeting starts at 8:30, which our meeting starts, if the people are not there, just assume they decided not to come today. And don't wait for them and wait for them. Always start in honor of the people who did come. And so we're going to start talking now about generating great numbers. As we said before, 20% of businesses earn 80% of the profits, and your job is to be in the top 20%. And the very best businesses are very knowledgeable about the most important numbers. And there are certain numbers in a business that are absolutely essential. And if you get the wrong numbers, or you don't know what those numbers are, you can go bankrupt, just like that ship in the Chinese Sea, the Yangtze River last night. I don't know if you saw it on the news. Ship with 584 people got into a storm and turned over. It just flipped and everybody drowned. Well, a business can just flip and go bankrupt very quickly if you lose track of the numbers. I want you to think, imagine driving a car down a winding, narrow road with a cliff on one side and the ocean on the other side. And you're driving down this road at night. Well, if you take your eyes off the road for just 1 second, you're going to have a terrible crash. You're going to go off a cliff and into the ocean. And this is what happens. 100-year-old businesses that stop focusing on their numbers. A 100-year-old business, multinational, can go bankrupt in less than a year if it loses track of the numbers. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some examples of numbers and why they're important. And I want you to select, almost like you go to the market and you say, well, I'm going to choose that number, and I'm going to choose that number, and I'm going to choose that number. So here's what we found, is the potential profitability of your business is far greater than your current results. This is your current profitability. This is your potential profitability. How do we know this? Because hundreds and thousands of companies every year go from a little profit to huge profits, And they don't change very much. Sometimes they just change one number. And the question is, how do you get there? And the answer is focus on the key numbers in your business. Focus on the key numbers. So how do you generate great numbers? We say continual focus on your most important numbers changes and improves them. A very simple example is, let us say you decide to lose weight, and the critical number you look at is your waist size. And you measure your waist size to the centimeter every single day. Just watching your waist size will cause you to eat differently. You'll eat foods that are much more likely to cause your weight to shrink. You'll find, for example, I'll give you a great example. A company, billion-dollar company, invited me to speak a few years ago at their annual meeting. And this was a celebration meeting because the company had been on the verge of bankruptcy about 2 years before. And they'd brought in a new president, and the president got rid of all the old people, and then he studied the numbers. And this company was, like all companies, a sales and marketing organization. They generated a lot of leads with their advertising. It was a big company. And so he came in and he said, why is it our sales are so low? Remember, number one reason for business problems, low sales. We have low sales. So he did some research and he found that the average salesperson, they had something like 42 offices across the state of California. The average salesperson in those offices was making 2 calls a week. And because there was no control, the previous management had no control of the numbers. They just said, well, do a good job. And so the salespeople spent more and more time in the office and more time talking and more time on social media. And they had leads, but they were only going out and seeing customers, 2 customers a week. So he called in his vice president of marketing and he said, here's the numbers that we have on average, and we have to change this immediately. And so here's what I want you to do. I want every salesperson to be making 2 calls a day. That's not very many. This was a complex sale, medical insurance, and we have leads. 2 calls a day. If they are not making 2 calls a day by the first week of next month, then I'm going to fire you and get somebody else in here who can make sure they do that. So he called all the managers of all the 42 offices, and he said, here's the new orders, is every salesperson in your company, your office, must be making 2 calls every single day and must have written reports and send them in to you, and you must check the reports. And if you are not doing that by the end of the month, you will be fired. And so the managers all sat down with the salespeople, and what do you think they said? If you're not making 2 calls every single day by the end of this month, you will be fired. And you know what? They said, well, all right. And they all went out and made 2 calls a day. Now, here's a tough question, all right? If you're making 2 calls a day, 2 calls a week, and you increase it to 10 calls a week, what is likely to happen to your sales? Your sales are going to increase by 5 times, just by the law of probabilities. You don't know where the sale is going to come from, but if you talk to 5 times as many qualified prospects, you're going to get 5 times as many sales. The sales went up and up and up. The company turned around, the profitability, and he was on the front page of every business magazine and newspaper in the state. He was on business radio shows, television shows. He was a hero. He got awards from the industry. And why? He just told the salespeople, make 2 calls a week, and we're going to check every day. 2 calls a day, and we're going to check every day. So sometimes just changing one number, and I gave you a couple of examples as we go along, changing one number can dramatically change the whole business. This business went from on the verge of bankruptcy to one of the most profitable businesses in the United States. It generated an extra $1 billion in sales because of one number. So you have to ask the number, you have to ask the question, what are the numbers? So we say all business activities can be expressed in numbers. I said yesterday, you must express every goal must make it measurable. You must have a number for every goal, and if you want to be rich, then you have to have a financial number for every goal. So people say, well, 2 calls a day rather than 2 calls a week. Good, that's a number. Now you want to have a certain level of sales activity per call, per person, per week, per month. So we say numbers don't lie. And this is one of the hallmarks of when they bring in a new person to head up a company that's in trouble, the first thing they do is look at the numbers. The numbers tell the truth. Key numbers measure success or failure. And accuracy is essential to business success. Now, I have a good friend. His name is Alex Yablonsky. Alex lives in a variety of places. He lives in Moscow. He's Russian. He lives in Kiev, but sometimes he lives in New York at the Trump Tower. Sometimes he lives in Miami. Sometimes he comes to San Diego or goes to London or Paris. Last time I spoke to him, he was going to Monte Carlo. He's got a laptop like this, and he's developed a business that he markets online, and it's a business advice consulting business. And what he does is he does basically Skype calls that 500 or 1,000 people all over the Russian-speaking countries can dial into on a schedule. And he'll just flip this open. I know because he came out to San Diego for 2 weeks. He just flipped this open, put in the numbers. He'd go straight into his server in Kiev, which is managed by his partner. And then what he'll do is he'll just talk about business, sales, marketing, promotion, business growth, and so on. And then he'll take questions, and it's set up so they can ask questions. Alex started this business about 3 years ago. First year, he did about maybe $500,000 in business. Last year, he did $5 million in business. And he generates all his leads from Google, in Russian Google, just using Russian Google. And he spends $20,000 a week generating leads. So over the course of last year, it cost him $3 million to generate the leads, to have other staff process them, to handle the servers and everything else. And he made $2 million profit himself. And what he does, he says he watches every single number in his business. When he advertises on Google, he knows that for every single customer that comes from Google, he's going to close 2% of those customers. So if 100 people click because they're interested, he'll close 2% at an average of about $1,000 per customer. So he can spend $20,000 a week getting people into the top of the funnel because he knows he's going to get 2%. And he keeps measuring and measuring and measuring. That's what he has two things: he delivers and he measures. He has a vice president in charge of finance who measures, measures, measures. And here's what he said. Here's my point. He said, inaccurate numbers are a business crime. Inaccurate numbers are a business crime. You're committing a crime against your business and a crime against yourself by having inaccurate numbers. So you'll find that the very best business people are very careful about making sure those numbers are accurate. So we always ask two questions. One, did you validate your numbers? You said, well, we've got 20 people a day calling us. Really, have you kept a close record? Is this true? And the second thing is always ask, is this number true? Is this number a true number? And always ask, and always be suspicious. Always assume that there is something wrong until you're absolutely proven. The best business people I know will check a number at least 3 times, 3 different ways, especially if it's an important number. So just to give you a very simple example, if you own a store, then the size of your sales is going to be determined by the number of people who walk past the store, and then by the number of people who walk in. So therefore, the very most successful stores are the ones that have the highest foot traffic. And then, of course, you have to get them to come in. So you can say, all right, where's the best place to locate a store? And it's where the highest foot traffic is. But how do you determine that? You go and you sit there for 8 hours, click, 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 click with a little clicker to determine how many people are walking past. You don't believe the landlord who wants to rent the space to you, because the landlord's going to say he's going to give you the highest traffic on the one single day of the week. Second of all, in your business, sometimes they have when you walk into a business, it goes ding dong, so that you know that somebody came into the business. What you do is you count the number of people who come into your business every day. And then what you say is, how can I get more people to come into the business? If I'm getting 100 people a day and I can get 110, what's going to happen to my sales? They're going to go up by 10%. What if I can get 150? They're going to go up by 50%. In other words, you have to measure every important number that is relevant to your sales and profitability. And inaccurate numbers are a business crime. A business crime. And you cannot imagine how many business criminals there are out there, because they either don't have the numbers, have not gathered the numbers, or have got the wrong numbers. So here's what Jim Collins, remember Jim Collins wrote his book, From Good to Great. it became the best-selling and still is the best-selling business book in the world today. Sold millions of copies. What he did was he looked at companies that had been good for a long time and then became great companies. Now, they didn't become great in 1 week or 1 month. It took them anywhere from 2 to 7 years after they decided to be great companies. Now, this is really important, is you have to decide to be a great company. It's not going to happen automatically. It's only going to happen because you decide. Oops, I better turn this back on here. There we go. So it's only when you decide that you're going to become a great company that the process begins. You don't wake up the next day and your company is a great company. And so he checked, and he looked at 1,100 companies, and then he looked at the companies that went from good to great. He had a whole team of researchers, and they identified 7 critical factors. Critical factor number 1 was leadership. So that was the starting point. And he said you get a good leader, and the leader is the spark plug that drives the whole company forward. If you don't have a good leader, you can have best products, best markets, best everything, and you will fail. But if you have a good leader, then you will succeed. But the second, one of the other 7, he found 7 qualities, is that each company determined their economic denominator. This is so important. It's literally a make or break deal. And the economic denominator is the one number that most accurately predicts business success or failure. For example, if you want to lose weight, there's one number that determines whether you lose weight. It's the amount of calories you consume. If you consume more calories than you burn, you gain weight. If you consume fewer calories than you burn, you lose weight. It's called calories in, calories out. And all the diet books and diet formulas and diet pills and diet everything in the world come down to the one equation, calories in, calories out. Want to lose weight? Fewer calories in than calories out. Now, if you exercise more, walk more, and so on, then you burn up more calories. If you keep the same level of food. I had a good friend, and he's a really good friend of mine, and all the time I've known him, 25, 30 years, he's been overweight. I mean, he's just overweight. And then I saw him a couple of months ago, and he was thin. He was thin. His clothes were just hanging on him. I said, what on earth happened to you? He said, I began to count calories in. I got an app, and in the app, it says every time you consume anything, you punch it in, and it'll tell you exactly how many calories you're going to get from this amount of this food. And you punch it in, and you're only allowed 2,000 calories a day. See, the average person during the course of a day burns up about 3,000 calories. If you only burn up 2,000, then you'll lose the equivalent of 1,000 calories a day. So he just every single time had a cup of coffee, put sugar in it, put in the calories. Had a sandwich, put it in, whatever he ate, put it in. And when he hit 2,000 calories, he was not allowed to eat any more that day. And when he started off, he hit 2,000 calories at breakfast. And the rule was you could not eat any more until next day. And after going to sleep hungry for a couple of days, he started to spread the food across the day. So he had a little bit at breakfast to kill his appetite, a little bit at lunch, a little bit at dinner, and the weight that had been there for 25 years, his whole life, it just fell off. And he was thin, and he was so happy. So the point is, just by watching the one number, calories in, calories out, he was able to lose weight. And you can do the same thing. Anyone can do it if they have the self-discipline, which is the big challenge. So what is it for your business? What is what we call your big number, the most important number? Now, this is what I've discovered. In every business, there's 5 or 6 numbers, but there's one big one. It's almost like a triangle. At the top of the triangle, there's the most important number that basically predicts and determines your success or failure. And then there's 4 or 5 other numbers that contribute to that number. So I want to give you some examples of numbers that may be the right ones for you. Now, remember, every business is different. Every market is different. And so some of these numbers will be relevant for you, some not. The basic numbers is the number of new leads. In business development, we're all in the business of finding new customers. So the number of new leads is how many new customers are you attracting with your advertising. This is pretty much a determinant of how successful you're going to be, unless, like in the example yesterday of the people who are attracting a lot of prospects, the husband and wife, and the people were walking away because the premises looked cheap, or the people were poorly dressed, or the people were not trained. So they would come in and they listen to the salespeople who were not trained, and they just walk out and buy from someone else. By the way, excellent sales training or an excellent sales system, which we'll talk about later today, will increase your sales by 3 to 5 times. Companies that have an excellent sales process sell 3 to 5 times as much as companies selling the same product at the same price that have no sales process. So number 2 is the number of conversions to sales. If you can imagine a funnel is so you have people come in the funnel, the leads. How many of those people buy? What percentage? If it's 10% today and you can raise it to 20%, you double your sales and profitability and live in a big house on a hill and drive an expensive car and go to nice restaurants. And so how do you convert them to sales? Number 3, what is the size of each sale? That is another essential number. If you can increase the size of each sale, you can dramatically change the economics of your business. Number 4, what is the gross profit per sale? How much do you make after you take away the cost of the product itself? That's gross profit. And what is the net profit per sale? This is the amount that you earn after you deduct 100% of all costs involved. And this is something we'll come back to in a second. But many people in business don't realize that their labor, the amount that they take out as income, is a cost of doing business and has to be deducted from every sale. If it takes you 2 or 3 hours to conclude a sale with a customer and you're paying yourself $50 an hour, then you have to add $150 to the cost of that sale. If the sale was only a $100 sale and you spent 3 hours to get it, you just lost $50. I mean, that is real money. And some people running small businesses, by the way, actually go broke because they don't include their own labor as a fundamental cost of the product or service. So number 6, what is the frequency of purchase? How often do people buy from you? That is very important. If you can get a person to buy a small amount at the beginning, but make them so happy that they buy again and again, that is a great customer for you. By the way, the most successful companies, and we'll talk about this afternoon in customer service strategy, the most successful companies have very, very high levels of resales and referrals. Enormous number of people buy from them and buy from them again and again. Number 7 is referrals generated from happy customers. How many referrals do you get? So each time you make a sale, how many new sales do you get because that customer is so happy? And just changing this number, remember we said before, if you can get one referral who buys the same amount from every sale you make, that doubles the size of your business. If you can get 2 referrals, 3 referrals, 4 referrals, it triples, quadruples, and quintuples the size of your business. So what do you do to get referrals? So here are the business numbers that you watch. Actually, I've worked out, I've spent years on this. There's about 40 numbers. I'm going to give you the top 20. And so ask yourself which of these numbers is most important for you, because you're going to write this down. Number 1 is sales. Most people say sales is the most important number that we look at. I was doing a strategic planning session for a large company, and we asked them, what is your most important number? And they said sales. It's always sales. We look at sales all the time. We're a sales organization. And I said, well, what if it's costing you more to get each sale than you're actually earning in profit? With advertising, promotion, cost of manufactured goods, distribution, service, refunds, defects, bad debts, and all of those things, what if you're losing money when you make each sale? Then the more sales you make, the faster you go bankrupt. And they were all shocked because they've been walking around, patting themselves on the back saying, we know our number, sales is it. So then they said, no, it's not sales, it's profits. It's net profits at the end of the day. It's what is called net cash flow. At the end of the day, when all business is done, how much money can you actually take and go home with, put in your pocket? That's your net cash flow after everything. And that's the most important number for a business is net cash flow. Not gross cash flow, but net cash flow. Number 2 is other revenues of all kinds. Licensing revenues, the sale of other products, the sale of a variety of things, sometimes the sale of property, sometimes rents. Some companies like McDonald's. McDonald's is the biggest restaurant company in the world, but also the biggest real estate company, because as I told you, they made a policy from the beginning to buy the land under all their restaurants. Sometimes they have a restaurant in a shopping complex. They own the land under the shopping complex. They own 36,000 restaurants and they own the land. And the land is paid off over time with revenues from McDonald's. So they're the biggest real estate owners in the history of the world. And they sometimes make more money from rents to the other people who want to locate in the same building as McDonald's, they make more money from rents than from hamburgers. And if McDonald's right now were to shut down all their restaurants and simply rent out their premises, they'd probably make more profit than they're making today. So there's other sources of revenue. What are your sources of revenue? Number 3 is cost of goods sold. Now this is the highest, this is the second or third biggest cost in a company. If you sell one of these, how much do you pay to buy it from the manufacturer? How much do you sell it for? And what is your cost? Now many companies make a mistake and they don't add in all the associated costs, what we call attributed costs, to this purchase. And they say, well, I pay it by $100, I sell it for $200, making 100% profit. Do you know companies go broke every single day making 100% profit? Because now you have to take away your labor and your rent and your utilities and your shipping costs and your credit card charges and your interest. And you have to take away your utilities and your internet business, and you have to take away your receptionist and your service people. And by the time you've taken the costs away, you'll find that something that you bought for $100 and you sold for $200 is actually costing you $300. And so the more you sell, the faster you go broke. And right now, all over the world, companies are going broke faster and faster by selling products because they have not added all the little costs, which is something we'll talk about in this session. Number 4 is expenses. What is every single cost of doing business? And remember, inaccuracy is a business crime. You must know every single expense, every single dash of salt, every bit of sugar, every pencil, every piece of paper, everything that goes into operating your business. And there's a rule, whenever we have people do a financial plan, we have them add 20 to 30% for unknown or unexpected. So if you reckon that it's going to cost you $1,000 a month to operate your business, automatically gross that up to $1,200 or $1,300, because that's always the case. Oh, here's another rule, by the way, which is not even in this seminar, but it says everything that you do costs twice as much and takes 3 times as long. Everything in business costs twice as much and takes 3 times as long, especially at the beginning. And if I've had many business people who said to me in my seminar, that's not true, not for me, I plan, I organize, I have accurate numbers, and they came back afterwards a year later and they said, I couldn't believe it, everything cost twice as much and took 3 times as long. So if you think that you are going to pay X number of dollars in total to operation of your business, it's going to cost twice as much. If you think you're going to break even in 3 months, it's going to take 9 months or longer. And so you must always think twice as much, 3 times as long, twice as much, 3 times as long. Now, sometimes you can reverse those numbers and it costs 3 times as much, takes twice as long. But it's always 3 times, 2 times, 2 times, 3 times. Are you with me so far? And that's how you budget. That's how you calculate. In time management, by the way, we have what is called the 70-30 rule. The 70-30 rule says always allow yourself a 30% buffer in the course of a day. Don't book yourself solid all day long with meetings and appointments, because you're going to have so many unexpected things. Just getting stuck in Dar es Salaam traffic could set you back 30 or 60 minutes. So always give yourself a 30% buffer or cushion in the planning of your day. And if some miracle happens and you get everything done, well then you can work on other tasks. So number 5. By the way, we say it's okay to fool other people, but don't try to fool yourself. Don't fool yourself, because these rules are written in stone. These rules about 2 times, 3 times, 70-30 rule, and so on. These are rules that come from the experiences of millions of businesses and tens of millions of people. And don't expect that you're going to be the one who's going to violate the rules. Number 5 is salaries and wages, usually the biggest single expense in a business. And so you have to study your salaries and wages. The very best thing, in my company, what we do is, I told you we have 18 to 20 people, and when we originally started these people, we'd give them a good salary and a small commission or bonus on results. And then over time, my partner has changed it. He's very good with numbers, right down to the penny, very accurate with numbers. He went to them and he said, you know, we can pay you more on commission and bonus if we can pay you less as a fixed cost, as a base salary. Which would you like to do? Lower base, higher commission, or lower commission, higher base? And you know what? They talked among each other. They said, how much are you making? How much are we selling? Da, 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 da. And they came back and they all said, we want high commission, low base. And now my girls, and I say them that very complimentary, 26, 27 years old, make $65,000, $70,000 a year, drive new cars. And my top women make $100,000, $150,000 a year, all commission. And we call them the sharks. And we call our general manager, we call her Mama Shark. And then everybody else is Sand Shark, Junior Shark, Little Shark, White Shark, Black Shark. And everybody's got a name, a shark name. And then the head who runs all this is called Mama Shark. And that's how they think. And they are sharks. They generate hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars in sales. I mean, they are like animals. Why? It's because commission is good. People love commission. So what are your salaries and wages? Now, can you lower your wages, which is a fixed cost, and make more of your salaries variable by giving commissions based on results and performance? What is lead generation? Lead generation is one of the most important things, if not the most important thing in business. In internet business, by the way, as I said yesterday, we call it lead gen. And everybody in the company is focused on lead gen. And the people who are the best at writing the ads and the advertisements and stuff they do is brilliant. And generate leads, we pay them huge premiums. So you got guys that are 23 years old that have an incredible knack for developing copy to attract leads, and we pay them $50,000, $60,000 a year. Why? It's because we know exactly if we generate this many leads, how many of these people will start to move into funnels, how many will buy, how much they will buy, in what period of time, and how often they will buy. So you get one person into our funnel, like Alex Yavlonsky, get one person to our funnel, we can say that person is going to be worth $343.26 over the course of 12 months. And so if this guy can generate several hundred of those people, and we're selling digital products, so it has no cost, they're downloadable products, that's pretty profitable. Are you with me so far? And so keep saying, how much does it cost to generate leads? How much per lead? Now, conversion rate. What is your conversion rate from lead to customer? Our conversion rate runs about 2%, the same as Alex's. So we know that if we got a person in the top who basically we attract them and they say, I'd like more information, we know that we'll turn 2% of those into customers. And we know what the average gross and net will be per customer. And we can project our sales out for an entire year. And we do. And my partner, Eric, he is very accurate. He's not guilty of any business crimes. He will say that in June, our sales will be this, our gross, our net, and our profit will be this, and this is how much your share will be. And he's very, very accurate. Number 8 is the cost of customer acquisition. Now, here is an interesting gem. I told you about my gems. The gem is that every business is in the business of buying customers. Everything you spend in marketing, sales, commissions, promotion, radio, news, television, online, Google, everything is to buy customers. If you can buy customers at a lower price than the profit you earn from the customers, you grow. If it turns out that you are paying too much for customers and you're paying $100 but you're only getting $90 back, then the more customers you get, faster you go broke. And this is the primary reason. Have you seen, if you read in the financial press, sometimes you'll see a story of a big company that did $4.6 billion in sales last year, lost $1.5 billion. And you look at that, $4.6 billion in sales, and they lost $1.5 billion. How on earth did that happen? This is mind-boggling that you could have that many sales. Do you know what? They paid more for the sale than they earned in profit. They got their costs are out of control. They're spending too much to acquire customers, and they're more customers they get, the faster they go broke. And this is happening all the time. So, interesting, I built 2 large self-storage businesses. They spent about $14 million on them. And then I sold them. One I sold to the biggest self-storage company in the United States. They have about 1,800 self-storage units around the country.